What's up guys, Scapegoat here, and today we're going over who is the potential winner going to be in the Create a Card contest. So obviously Konami is putting out this little poll for us to vote on which of these archetypes will be the winner and get their own special new card. So from the contest so far we have, the Weather, Cradle, Lightsworn, Dynamist, all those good archetypes, right? X-Saber, Hazy Flame, Photon, Frogs, TG. So pretty much the ones we're going to be talking about right now are in the final four. Now that we're kind of in like the top four area, it's gonna be kind of interesting to look back at some of the votes and see how popular some of these archetypes are. I know some people were surprised about the Dynamist winning over Lightsworn. I know that was a big surprise. Also, Frogs winning over, Photons winning over Frogs, as well as over Mermail. Photons are actually pretty popular, but we're going to go over these top four and kind of look at all of the data to kind of come to a conclusion of which of these decks will win and like kind of how will they place, knowing that the next round will be Photon versus X-Saber and Inzektor versus Dynamist. So let's just take a look at some of the past results and kind of see where we're looking at. So we see that Inzektor did beat Valkyrie with a 12,000 lead over 7,000. After that one, we have X-Sabers winning over Fire King? Yeah, Fire King. And that was only by like 600, so not very much, right? Comparatively, if you look at a deck like Inzektor's won with a 5,000 lead, and X-Sabers only won with about 600. So a big difference. You can kind of tell what we're looking at here when comparing the two. The next one that we're going to look at is the Photon versus Mermail, where Photon actually beat Mermail, and that is about 30,000, 3,500 lead. Mermail lost to Photons by like 3,000, 3,500 or so. So that's quite a big gap. And as you can tell, that's still much larger than the X-Saber. So yeah. Dynamist was the next one. You can kind of notice the layout of the polls change. Yeah, pretty interesting with that. They kept making some weird choices on those polls for the design purposes of everything. But next up we have Dynamist versus Lightsworn. This is where my mind kind of boggled, considering a lot of people liked Lightsworn or expected them to win, and Dynamist just came out of nowhere. Shoutouts to Triff. Obviously Pendulum Army coming in there hot. So 14k to 12k pretty much. We're looking at a 2,000 lead. So Dynamist winning by 2,000. So those are the first four polls. As you can kind of notice, I believe Inzektor kind of had like the biggest gap, right? So major points to Inzektor's right there. Also, the matchup kind of does play a factor. Valkyries, obviously, compared to Inzektor's, people are going to vote Inzektor's. However, with Dynamist, it was very close because they were playing against Lightsworn. So that was to be expected. They still did manage to pull ahead pretty well. And then we can look at the second half of the poll. This is round two. We look at Dynamist versus the Weather, right? So we can kind of compare the two. This is kind of a lesser wanted archetype, right? But they still managed to only pull above by like 3,000, which is still considerably good, right? Comparatively to Lightsworn, that's about a 1,000 point difference. So they definitely did a little better in the next round, right? Still pulling ahead, doing very well. The other archetype, X-Saber versus Fortune Lady, we can see another close pull for X-Saber, barely winning by 700 points. Very similar to the earlier round, which was only about 600. So definitely not looking so great for X-Saber. They got pretty far. I do think they're probably one of the weaker candidates, right? After that, we go back to Photons, right? Photon versus Frog. This is another close matchup that a lot of people are kind of sad about. This is actually one of the highest points, I think, was in the whole poll, with like close to 16k votes to 14k votes. That makes it like almost 30k just about. So as you can see, 15.7 to 14, we're looking at about 2,700 or something like that, right? 2,800. So a big 3,000 point difference almost. Photon's still pulling ahead pretty well, especially against a popular archetype like Frog. After that, it's Inzektor versus Sylvan, two very good decks for their time. Inzektor did win very minorly to Sylvan by 400 points, and comparatively, when you look at that to something like this, it does kind of look lackluster. And then the final deck we're looking at, I guess, oh yeah, we kind of had Inzektor and Sylvan in there twice, huh? That's fine. So we're back to the poll. Alright, so we're trying to predict which one of these decks will win based on all of those stats, right? So let's pull up a little notepad with all of that data put down, right? So as you can see, we have the Photon versus X-Saber matchup. That's going to be on the right side. And comparatively, as you know, we just looked at, we noticed X-Saber wasn't doing too hot with polling. They were only pulling ahead about 600 points or so ahead of their opponents. So I do think they're one of the weaker choices going into these top fours, meaning I think the winner of that round will be Photon. Just based on looking at how many points they've had, if you add up round 1 and round 2, you know, Photon has 26k votes, almost 27, and X-Saber has 15. So Photon has about 10,000 more votes. That means 10,000 more people or so are more into Photons as opposed to X-Saber. Obviously, earlier matchups do play a factor. However, it's just lackluster to see X-Saber getting such low pulls as opposed to some of the other decks. And as you can kind of see and like get a hint, most of these decks are pulling over 10 grand. And we checked the next round, which was Inzektor. Inzektor versus Dynomist. Round 1, Inzektor got about 12k votes. And then round 2, it got about 8,900, which brings it about to 20,000. Dynomist doing a little better. Has 14k in the first round and 11k in the second round. Dynomist going down very slightly, right? The kind of popularity kind of faded once it got paired up against was it White Sworn? No, the Weather round 2. Just kind of weird, it kind of got less in the Weather round. But for this matchup, I would even say Dynomist would win. Just by looking at the you know, the numbers, I still think Inzektors have pretty close of a chance comparatively to every other archetype that's competed so far. So this could actually, you know, it's a 6,000 point difference, almost a 5,000 point difference, but I think it'll actually pull very close when they actually go against each other, just judging by how many votes they have gotten for those rounds. 12,000 for the first round. Meanwhile, X-Saber only consistently got 7,000 to 8,000 points. So based on that, we're gonna take Inzektor and X-Saber out of the equation, right? And now we are versing just Dynomist and Photon. So if you add them up, 26k, 26.6, right? And then Dynomist 26.2. So just based on that, you can see Photon does have a slight advantage just based on the current votes. You can see the trend where Photons actually are going up, right? So about 5,000, 4,000 points ahead from round 1 to round 2. Meanwhile, Dynomist kind of went down 3,000 points. So it's kind of equaling out. It's just very dependent. It's gonna be in the end, I think, between an anime deck versus a deck that is behind a fad pretty much. And when it's going to come to that, I'm pretty sure the anime deck is going to pull through, especially when you consider stuff like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links event, where the new Exceed monsters and all of that stuff, the new Exceed products coming out. It just makes perfect sense that a Exceed deck will win. this type of matchup, especially when it's an anime deck and when the numbers of the polls are just going up and they're already very close and better than Dynamist. But that's just speculation, you know. This can definitely change. We'll have to look at the next 2 rounds to kind of see where we're at, and I will come back to it to kind of see if the numbers do change comparatively, since Dynamist will be going against another really good deck in Zector. Meanwhile, Photons is going up against X-Saber, which I think is a very easy matchup for Photon. Photon had PGs, which was another anime deck, which wasn't as great. But Frogs ended up beating it, which then Photons did get paired up against Frogs, and they beat it. Photons also beat Mermail, a very good option as well. So Photons, I think, will overtake X-Saber, and then Dynamist versus Inzektor, I think, will be fairly close considering how the other rounds went for Dynamist. Dynamist pretty much outright beating all of its opponents. I think it'll come very close in the matchup with Inzektor, but I think Dynamist will take it, and then we'll get a Photon versus Dynamist in which Photon will take it. But we can review this back when the next round comes out, round 3, and we can add up all the scores after that and kind of see where we're at. But let me know what you guys think below. What deck do you want to win out of these 4, or even let me know what deck you wanted to win in general, or what deck deserves support, because there's a lot of decks that deserve support that weren't listed. A lot of decks that I can think of, but out of these, I would want Inzektor or X-Saber to win. Photon's a cool 3rd pick for me. I just don't want Dynamist to win, but I do think Dynamist will come 2nd, Photon will come 1st, X-Saber will come 4th, and Inzektor will be 3rd. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below if you like this, if you want me to review when we come to the finals. So I'll catch you guys later, and good luck to your deck. Bye.